Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier, and thank you kindly for stopping by. Let me first of all wish each and every one of you who comes and watches this podcast or reads things that I write. I'm deeply grateful, and I wish you a spectacular 2015, one which surpasses even your wildest expectations. And wouldn't that be fun to live such a year? I took this photograph. I was down by the beach at Swahili Beach in Diani over Christmas and New Year. And, I took this photograph of a sign, of some signage on the beach in front of the hotel. And as I was leaving Diani yesterday to drive back, and we had 2 punctures before we even started, which was a godsend in the way that they happened then rather than later and on the road. So we started much later. But as I was leaving the hotel, I sort of took a photograph of the sunrise. I think it was 7 a.m. or so, and said to myself and everyone else, because I tweeted it, let's dream big this year. If you haven't had a look at Aaron's musical component of his Mind Speak, that link is up on YouTube, it's up on the website. Do take a look. My macro thoughts are that the dollar is going to rally really big in 2015, but that's been my thought for a while. Home thoughts: we had a wonderful time in Diani at Swahili Beach. I said to Nisha, this visit is affording us deep insights into the Kenya upper middle class, and well done to Shamale for what was some very high value capture over the Christmas period in terms of the guests. The hotel was sold out, and it's been pretty traumatic for hoteliers on the coast. There is certainly a Pied Piper type person in Diani who summons all the teenagers, and probably up to those up to 30 years old, or a bit beyond even. One night I dropped Aisha, and Layla offered 40 Thieves, which is a beach bar, a little bit more than that, and the big event was cancelled, and basically all these folks descended on 40 Thieves, and they made out like bandits. Anyway, I drop off Aisha and Layla. I'm driving back. It's about midnight, and on my way back I see this European individual walking on the road, barefoot, in a pair of shorts, not much else. And I thought to myself, damn good show. But then I worried in case anything happened to him, because he was out there, pitch black, obviously going to 40 Thieves. So there is quite a scene down there, and one parent said to me, the kids run our lives, that's why we're all here. And, clearly it does. Hannah had a great time, most of it spent in the pool. We got to Wasini Island. I'll put up a photograph. Sadly, did not see any dolphins, and when I tweeted about that, somebody said no one's seen any for ages, but I don't think that's clear. It's strictly true. We saw a turtle, and I tracked it underwater, and that was very cool. And I said to Nisha, jump in, and she did, and I asked her afterwards, how was it? Because I knew floating around in the deep Indian Ocean was not something she would typically do. I was quite proud of her. While swimming about, she asked, where is the boat? And I said, do not worry, they will follow us. They were nowhere to be seen momentarily. I would like to thank Mr. Kelly and Mrs. Moni Kelsey for being such charming and interesting hosts at Swahili Beach. Hannah told me I love the Kenyan coast, and I thought, that's my girl. The teenagers might have said the same thing, but they had gone a little nocturnal on me. We drove back yesterday. I put up a photograph I took of Fort Jesus, which I really liked. We went to visit English Point, which is a marina development. And Al Noor, the prime mover behind it, took us round, and really tremendous first-class facility. Some challenges, I think, in terms of selling it, but extraordinary facility, and I took that photograph of Fort Jesus from there. Verge tweeted, the White House has released It's photos of the year, and one of them is Barack Obama, and it certainly caught my attention, and I suspect it'll catch yours. Flight QZ8501, an Airbus 320, lost contact with the Jakarta Air Traffic Control Tower at 6:17 a.m. From a report in today's Independent, he said it's really hard to comprehend that the plane acted in a way bordering on the edge of logic as it plunged into the water like a piece of metal being thrown down. Mr. Sojatman believes the crash occurred because the aircraft was caught in a severe updraft followed by an equally severe ground draft, with the leaked figures showing that it climbed at a staggering rate of 6,000 feet to 9,000 feet per minute. The aircraft then fell at 11,000 feet a minute, with bursts of up to 24,000 feet. In marked contrast to regular circumstances when a plane would climb between 1,000 to 1,500 feet on a sustained basis, gaining 3,000 feet in a burst. You can't do that at altitude in an Airbus 320 with pilot action, he argued. AirAsia, furthermore, no victim has been found wearing a life jacket, an official has said. Took me back to something I wrote on the 25th of August, saying the signal announcing this new arrhythmic normal in the world was the disappearance of the MH370. Pepe Escobar has written a typically irreverent article, but the key point deep in his article is that the American geopoliticians have taken over. And I think that's right. Only 3 days, he says, before the run on the ruble, I asked Rosneft's Mikhail Leontiev about the growing rumors of the Russian government getting ready to apply currency controls. At the time, no one knew an attack on the ruble would be so swift and conceived as a checkmate to destroy the Russian economy. After sublime espressos at the Taza d'Oro, right by the Pantheon, Leontiev told me that currency controls were indeed a possibility, but not yet. What he did emphasize was that this was outright financial war. The only equal component in this asymmetrical war was nuclear forces. Pepe continues, divide et impera, divide and rule. It's not working, and it's bound to fail miserably, he says. As it stands, what we do know is that 2015 will be a hair-raising year in myriad aspects. Because from Europe to Asia, from the ruins of the Roman Empire to the re-emerging Middle Kingdom, we all still remain under the sign of a fearful, dangerous, rampantly irrational empire of chaos, he says. Oliver Stone said the CIA had a role in Ukraine's armed coup. Well, I believe that for a while. And I'm not a dangerous lefty, I can tell you that. A dirty story, and in the aftermath, the West maintains the dominant narrative of Russia in Crimea. The true narrative is USA in Ukraine. The Ukrainian parliament on Tuesday renounced Ukraine's non-aligned status with the aim of eventually joining NATO. Any accession to the Western military alliance is likely to take years, but a NATO spokesman in Brussels said, "Our door is open, and Ukraine will become a member of NATO if it so requests and fulfills the standards and adheres to the necessary principles." Russia called the vote an unfriendly step towards us. And clearly, the adversarial nature seems set to continue. Hossein Amir Abdullahian described Saudi Arabia's inaction in the face of a 6-month slide in oil prices as a strategic mistake. Dismissed United States efforts to fight Islamic State. The reality is that the US is not acting to eliminate Daesh. They are not even interested in weakening Daesh. They are only interested in managing it. The SANA, the Syrian state agency, released a photograph President Bashar al-Assad eating with soldiers during a visit to Jobar, northeast of Damascus. If there was an area of joy which remained in Syria, it is thanks to the victories that you achieved in the face of terrorism, he said. People were thinking he was out in 2011. A man prays at a makeshift memorial at the site of the stampede in Shanghai. Very sad. Mario Cuomo passed away. I was reading a piece in the New Yorker. You go from stone to stone across the morass, he used to say. You campaign in poetry. You govern in prose, was another. Now, I remember in 1984, which was really the high point of his career, when he spoke at the Democratic National Convention, delivering his Shining City on the Hill speech. But then he subsequently never turned up for the presidential elections. Currency markets, Euro 120.57, it's at 29-month lows. Dollar index 90.57. Japanese yen 120.39, Swissy 0.9973, pound 155.57, Aussie 0.8131, India rupee 63.465, South Korean won 1102.11, the Rial 265.74, Egypt's pound 715.25, official rate, South African rand 1161.67. I'll put up a 3-month chart of the dollar index. My target is 100 this year. I'm very bullish about the dollar. Euro dollar 120.59. My target is 1. Parity in 2015. The euro is just off major support at 120.42. A level not seen since June 2010. Chinese stocks were the best performing stocks in the world, with an increase of 52% last year. Wall Street also managed double-digit gains. S&P was up 11%. Crude oil is at $53.91, getting a bit of a bounce on the 2nd of January 2015. I think it's headed to 40. It's ended last year at a 5-year low, capping a 46% drop in 2014. Goldman Sachs said it expects a far lower new normal for prices, and Barclays said oil has further downside risk. The real story is the shale revolution and the fact that Saudi Arabia, the 500-pound gorilla, refuses to be the one to make the cut to support prices. Everyone is fighting for market share down here. Gold 1184.835. I think that's headed lower as well. This photograph caught my attention of an African migrant celebrating after crossing the border from Morocco to Spain's North African enclave, and arriving at CETI, the short-stay immigrant center. Russell Feingold, who's the U.S. Special Envoy for the Great Lakes region of Africa and the DRC, said military action should take place against the mainly Rwandan armed group known as the FDLR. A recent surrender of about 50 FDLR fighters does not come close to meeting the January 2nd deadline for complete demobilization of a group with connections to some of the worst crimes in human history, Ambassador Feingold declared, and I call it a quid pro quo. You will recall that Rwanda and Nigeria delivered votes for Israel in the US and the UN. In fact, Lieberman, who was here in Nairobi, remember, I took a couple of photographs from that visit, invested a lot of political capital in East Africa, interestingly enough. Paul Collier, I like this quote from an article I read in the Mail and Guardian, there are big opportunities in Africa, but Africa is complicated. And where investors are at, I think, is that they have a sense that they know there are opportunities there, they know they don't know, and they know they better find out. South Sudan will hold general elections between May and July, said the government spokesman. The government will give amnesty to rebels to encourage the widest participation in the elections. This is the President's press secretary. We will hold elections in 2015 as we will not allow our democracy to be held hostage to violence. A budget has been approved and we urge all parties to participate. In South Sudan, power will not be attained by way of guns, but rather by ballots. The spokesman for the rebels, Brigadier General Lul Kong Ruai, rejected the polls and amnesty, saying forces fighting the government have committed no crime. He also rejected the planned elections on grounds of credibility. I think it's going to remain messy for longer. Soldiers loyal to President Yahya Jammeh went house to house in search of opponents on Thursday after the longtime leader blamed terrorist groups for staging an attempted coup earlier this week. Dhlakama in Mozambique insisted that a caretaker government should be formed in which both Frelimo and Renamo would appoint ministers. We shall govern together. The games are finished, he said. We let them govern in 2004 and in 2009. What are they thinking? They've become used to it. But I promise I will not let them go any further. South African all-share posted an increase of 7.596% in 2014. Dollar rand 1161.68, but I suspect another bout of dollar strength will take that lower. The Egyptian pound officially 715.25. The Egyptian stock market posted an increase of 31.613% in 2014. It is, however, below 9,000 marginally, having got to 9,810 last year. Nigerian all-share had a torrid fourth quarter. It's down 16.143% in 2014. I think it will be under further pressure. Africa Confidential has written an interesting piece, Nigeria Political Storm Warning. And it's very in-depth and interesting and giving a lot of perspective. Ghana Stock Exchange, that closed 2014 plus 5.4079%. The World Health Organization is reporting 7,905 Ebola deaths. Fantastic piece by Jeffrey Gettleman in the New York Times about how Ebola has affected the economy. As he says, the personal hospitality business may be the most obvious sector of Sierra Leone's economy that has been decimated by Ebola. On a recent sultry night, as the breeze stirred the palms and the waves gently crumbled against the shore, three women, Susan, Zainab and Tina, sat together at a beachside bar nursing bottles of warm beer. The bar was empty, the streets outside were deserted, faint yellow light spilling out from the sheet metal shanties, no male clientele in sight. It's been slow and rough, said Tina. Yes, said Susan, it's dead. Zainab stood up for a second to adjust her dress, which fit like a wetsuit. Since Ebola, she explained, no guys come around. What are we supposed to do now? And saying the main slogan in Freetown, the capital, these days is ABC, avoid body contact. That was also the quote I used to like from one of my favourite movies, Glengarry Glen Ross. ABC, always be closing. Of course, in every war or disaster there are profiteers. Ebola is of no exception. The authorities in Freetown recently announced the arrests of chlorine fraudsters. Men who were selling fake chlorine powder that looked like the stuff used to disinfect boots and hands. This place is lawless in security, getting much worse apparently. So clearly a very interesting article, I must say. The New York Times, Jeffrey Gettleman. The first patient in West Africa's devastating Ebola outbreak, a 2-year-old boy in Guinea, may have gotten the disease from bats in a dead tree in his village, a new study reports. Zambia has cut its 2014 growth estimate as mining industry contracts. Preliminary real GDP expanded by 6%. They're saying in October he predicted 6.5%. The IMF on Deck 18 estimated the economy grew by 5.5%. Kwacha down 13% last year, second worst performance in Africa after the SEDI. The government said there is no cause for alarm. There typically is when the government starts saying that. African brewers deploy sorghum and cassava in production. This is to counter the cost of barley. But in the article it says, according to the industry market research company Canadian Limited, the beer market in Western Europe is flat, estimated at minus 0.6% a year, while the volume of beer sold in Africa is expected to grow 4.6% per year on average from 2012 to 2016, faster than any other continent and nearly double the global rate. Kenya economy slows as tourism extends to an almost 2-year slump. GDP rose 5.5% on an annual basis from July to September, compared with 5.7% the quarter earlier. That compares with an expansion of 6.6% in the third quarter of last year. Output from the accommodation and restaurants category shrank 14.6% from a year earlier, with the industry contracting for the 7th straight quarter. In order to revive the industry in the new year, the Kenya Tourism Board said the Ministry of Tourism, in collaboration with his board, has earmarked more than 15 million shillings, less than $200,000, for incentives to chartered airlines from Germany and Italy. It's simply not enough. And I am very bearish, particularly about coastal tourism. And it was, we had a lovely time down there, but they're going back down to like practically zero come Jan 4. Base Resources makes an offer for World Titanium Resources. Announced an offer for an advanced stage mineral sands developer in Madagascar. Surprising move from Base, which is still ramping up its production from Kwale. It made an offer to acquire World Titanium Resources. All paper offer. Fellow writing this article then said, it surprised me, wouldn't expect Base to be a consolidator at this stage, but I think this is a perfect stage for them to be a consolidator because the market is so low price-wise. So I, for one, think it's a very bold and innovative move by Tim Carstens, in point of fact. Base Resources trades at 19 Aussie cents. It's a cheap share. And I think in particular, as you look ahead and you think of what Tim's up to, I think it's going to be a very interesting play. 624 days ago, I was at dinner with Jeff Tooth, who's now left the country, who was the Australian High Commissioner, and Tim was there, and I'll put up a photograph of Jeff and Tim. The Kenya shilling, 90.797, trying to deal with a very strong dollar. Nairobi All Share posted a 19.202% return in 2014. NSE 20 eked out a 3.775% gain in 2014. I'll put up a photograph of the early morning at Diani beach, and they had a very nice party, bikini party, but they lit up the hotel at night, and I tweeted very Scheherazade. I'll put up that photograph as well. Yeah, 11-month to November cement production surpassed full year 2013 tonnage. This is Business Daily Africa, and it took me back to Pradeep Panrana, who's laid a very bullish bet on this exact cement trajectory. Share price rallied 4.24% in the final trading session in 2014. Once again, let me wish you a great year, as I said at the beginning, and thanks for all the support that you've given me.